Hey guys, welcome to the first Mezcal Sunsets podcast. I have my friend George Siosi here. We're A/B testing a bunch of things today, including the background. So you see my boxing bag, one of them, because I have three. The human there, this one, which I'm suspending from here. It's live on my roof, right? I just worked out and got to pick up George in my motocross, which
Yeah,
was
been a
quite
minute.
rocky. And the concept, yeah, we have AirPods, so it's not my usual microphone. So pardon us for the tech audio, but it's going to be pretty good because George has an amazing background, serial entrepreneur, all about community, all about AI, all about building. He organizes these GSD meetups, get shit done in Oaxaca, and I'm eager to be part of that, to meet people physically and really get into deeper connections. So that'll be certainly part of my goals this year. So the concept of this podcast is a mezcal. So shout out to Tehe Maneje.
Mhm.
This is a mezcal and sunsets, right? Like we have the sunset in front of us. George needs to go at 5:30, so the sun should start going down.
Yeah.
We're drinking some mezcal, we're watching the sunset, and we're just talking about business, life, everything in between. So while I pour us some mezcal, for myself some mezcal, George, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. And a quick one too for those who have never heard of mezcal. Mezcal is well, like what my wife would like to say, the more sophisticated, refined version of the agave plant, which tequila is made from.
Yep.
So most people know tequila, but mezcal is really where it's at. So yes, okay. So yeah, my name is George Siosi Samuels. As mentioned, serial entrepreneur. Yes, very good.
Will you resist?
Very good. I know it's hard. But yeah, being involved in community, culture, and tech for the last 10 plus years. I'm really interested in the intersection of those three areas, the technical and the non-technical. My background was originally started out as a developer. My original dream was to work for Pixar.
Wow.
Yeah. So I actually started out animating stuff, doing web design, web development, and then I somehow found myself more on the people side. So I got involved in sales, marketing, business development, and then stumbled upon community stuff.
Nice.
I got into entrepreneurship formally in 2018. Now living in Mexico with my wife, and so are we.
So, okay, the mezcal, by the way, Tejemaneje, it's special because this one is from the state of Michoacan. Me and George were in the state of Oaxaca right now. And this podcast isn't really about mezcal, but the concept came to me because mezcal and alcohol generally, my philosophy on it, I sort of maxed out, getting drunk and shit, but it helps relax, right? And in my case, always high cortisol. Even if I don't see it, right, I'm stressed. I'm playing with my head sometimes, and it's nice to just be on a Friday on a rooftop with a beautiful view with someone and have a conversation and use this compound here, which I consider part of my biohacking regimen, and chill and relax. And what's nice about this mezcal here is that it's made in the state of Michoacan by women, mezcaleras. It's a special one because it's a naroqueño. There's different types of mezcal, and that one is, it's like the mother plant, right? So it is a gigantic agave plant that's sometimes 20 years old. So let's start the pod with cheers.
Cheers.
Let's start drinking and
Salud.
enjoying that beautiful view.
Yes.
How was your week? Oh shit, it's rock. 48%, 48%, guys.
Don't ever shot this, right? Tequila, you shoot, you take shots. Do never take shots of this.
So delicious, though.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Sorry. What was the question?
yeah,
Got distracted.
How was your week?
Week has been good. Actually, getting back into work was in Puerto Vallarta for the holiday period. In December, also visited Costa Rica. And
What part?
well, we went from San Jose and then a bunch of places, Atenas, and about 4 hours from there. And we went to about 3 or 4 different places. Rented a car and drove around with some family friends from my high school in Bangladesh, actually. Yeah.
Let's go to Bangladesh.
Yes.
Trolls down everything.
So ended up meeting up with them. So that family, like the parents, I kind of call them mom and dad. So the mom, she's Surinamese, and the father is Dutch. And so sometimes when I'm like, oh, mom and dad, they're like looking at them, looking at me. It's like, are you related? How come you got a white dad? It's like, oh, no, no, no. It's just we're that close, you know. So their daughters were there too, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think Costa Rica, what I loved the most was, just the volcanoes.
It's so special, that country. It's
Seriously,
like right on the equator, so the environment is totally different. It's like being in a humid jungle. It's like
yes.
nothing else out there, right?
Yes. And yeah, just really, really enjoyed it. And I think it was a great way to sort of end the year because last year was a very reflective year. I actually took my foot off the pedal a bit, to decelerate instead of accelerate, because I also felt like things were going to sort of ramp up this year and next year onwards. I think we're all seeing a lot of the changes that are happening around the world. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of craziness happening.
Yes.
And I think any of us that are able to do what we're doing right now, we're seriously blessed and fortunate that we can, because a lot of people don't have the same luxury.
100%.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a reflection of the last week and year.
Yeah, and just to talk a bit more about who you are, because you throw like friends from Bangladesh high school. I mean, you've been privileged, and it's been it's been quite different, your background, right? Like 0.001% of kids get to live the early life that you did. So tell us about your background and how it shaped you who you are today.
Oh, for sure. So yeah, it's an interesting one because I feel like I've lived. Well, I know what it's like to like have very little and have a lot.
Yeah.
So I was originally born in Fiji. So mother was from a village in Suva. My dad, I think, was middle class Fijian Indian, and my dad made a really good decision to sort of venture out of Fiji, and pursue a better life in New Zealand and then Australia. So yeah, we moved to Australia when I was 2, and then was there until 8, and then moving to a new country like Australia. All of the migrant stories. All of the migrant immigrant stories, that you hear. We kind of went through that when I was in Australia. And then, around the age of 8 is when my dad got a posting to Bangladesh. My mom, I don't think was very happy about it at the time, because most people don't know where Bangladesh is. It's right next to India, and this was in the 90s. So third world country, Muslim dominated, very new, huge culture shock. But it was also I had some of the most memorable years of my life. Went to an international school there. So in terms of shaping of worldviews, I think that international school is what shaped mine, because we really learned how to get along with people from different cultures, different races, and just different world to learn how to get along, despite those differences. Yeah.
AirPods just kicked in, by the way. Like,
okay.
Shit. So we were on my IMAX microphone. So yeah, we're A/B testing stuff here, but yeah.
Hopefully people could actually hear us.
Yeah. I just listened, but it was kind of windy. Today it's quite windy in Oaxaca. I feel the LA winds are getting to us. This week. I mean, there's been a bunch of crazy things this week, right? Like Trump saying he wants to invade Canada and shit like that, which sort of gets on my nerves. This fucking guy. And then the LA fires. I've had friends affected by that. What are the crazy events that you're seeing right now? Is it like just a trend? Like, is it just like someone that drank a lot is about to vomit? Is it? Are we getting in the hangover phase of this world? And how can you pronounce yourself on that? Does your background help you seize these trends in the world and observing what's happening, analyzing better than most humans could?
I can't say it's better, but I do feel like I'm more prepared emotionally for all of this stuff. Why? So interestingly, there's a lot of other larger cycles that are converging into this point in time for us. If you look at it from a geographical standpoint, some are saying there's a potential like pole shift about to occur on the planet. If you look at what's happening, there's this hole kind of appearing in our ozone down near the south of South America, and a lot of people are really knowing what to do with that. But yeah, the magnetic poles have also shifted. If you listen to some of the news from indigenous groups, in Alaska, Greenland, etc., is what.
Yep.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, a lot of what is being shared there is that uh, the cycles of that we've become used to are they're moving, and if you start to look at things a little bit more esoterically, the Mayans, they had these large, right, that they would follow. Apparently, we have already moved into the sixth sun cycle. I think that it was initiated in 2012. Hollywood, made it seem like it was the end of the world, but no, it was more part of a transition, just like how we're seeing the sunset now. And so from 2012 to 2021 was part of that transition. Now it's sort of it is kind of the hangover phase. So after transition, there's this sort of period where things are still. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different systems that have been talking about this major cycle shift right now. So I think that's happening at a much, and all that we're seeing right now are kind of, I don't know, manifestations of this. Yeah, so that's where I see things at the moment.
And you take all these spheres of culture. The white man is like, where's the science in
Yep.
that? But
Mhm.
it's like many cultures that probably didn't even know what science was, yet there's still wisdom
Yes.
into that. So how do you make like predictable sense out of all these different cultural spheres?
I mean, as you said, they're just cultural. Culture gives us different lenses to see through, right? And the way I see culture is that it provides us a way to make sense of our world from our environments, because our environments shape the cultures a lot too. But because we're more connected, so many of us have been moving around, so myself, right? So there's a lot of flashing of culture, and I think I look at Western culture, the white man's culture. It's just a different culture. We just have to learn to understand. And I think science is part of that lens, right? The scientific way of looking at things. And the way that I look at materialist science, which is kind of more the mainstream science that a lot of us in the West follow, is looking at things like mechanical parts, right? If you look at the way that we make solutions in the West, is that we try to look at things, break it apart, look at the individual things, and be like, okay, I can fine tune this, and then that'll change everything. But if you look at indigenous knowledge systems, a lot of their wisdom has come from centuries of lineage, right? Stuff that was passed down. They look at our world as a holistic system, which means no one part is just going to have, solve everything. So that's kind of how I see it. And I think we can learn things from both sides, because in a lot of indigenous cultures too, there can be a lot of superstitious belief systems, right? And sometimes those things override logic, but we have kind of similar things in the West too. There's scientific dogma. There are things that we believe in science sometimes just because it's labeled science, and we believe it blindly. So I often, when talking to people about science, I always go, okay, is this science? Is it scientific? Is this a scientific method, or is it scientism? Because all those things are different, and a lot of people confuse them.
Right.
Yeah.
And this reality machine, as an entrepreneur, it's really useful to understand the outcome of inputs, for example, and to make good predictions. I think that's
Yeah.
the science of entrepreneurship, is like being right and find the truth, right?
Yep.
It's a very complex machine, right? Because most of the time it's not this or that, it's and.
Yes.
Some sciences of some culture lose value over time, right? In space time. So you sort of need to aggregate all of that and give more weights to some nodes. How would this world change affect us in entrepreneurship? Because you and I, we're not here to ring alarm bells and be like end of the world type of bullshit. I don't think that will happen, but it will bring significant change uh, to this world. Be the change that I can see that will happen recently and will affect the most people is the job displacement created by AI.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a massive slap and a massive discomfort, probably even bigger than COVID, just that it will extend more, right? And it will be a bit a softer landing. What's your stance on that?
I think it's like what's old is new again. What I see is like, we talk a lot about decentralization, right? When blockchain came in and all these technologies come in to democratize everything. And, people forget that before nations, like we didn't have a concept for a nation. But obviously with colonization required more scale and standardization. And I think because now we've hit another form of scale or a new understanding of scale, I think power is going back to the small. And I'll give you some examples. Elon Musk just recently talked about how they're trying to adjust the algorithm to give more weight to smaller accounts, right? Because they've realized something, that just aggregating things en masse at large doesn't necessarily give you the truth, right? You can have accounts with smaller followings, with more truer things than those who are more popular. So there's a saying I like to use: "What's popular isn't always what's true," right? And I think that's definitely the case these days. But I think also if we look at quantum physics, this is an area that is getting increased attention. But I like what they're doing in that breaking understanding of the world.
Right.
Even our machines, we have known it to be one. And it's crazy. All the stuff we're using now, this tech,
Yeah. And that's how we think also nowadays.
correct binary.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's an interesting correlation between our technologies and our environments, right? Because our technologies are part of our environments now, and it's both influenced and then reinforced our behaviors. So the duality of our world, we have been very much conditioned and reinforced in terms of behaviors for this dualistic thinking, the if-else statements in programming. And what quantum physics does, it goes, well, actually, there is that and part, right? You can have more than just a 0 or 1, but you can have both states happening at the same time in the same instance, right? And now they've also mathematically proven the multiverse, different dimensions, realities. CIA is like, been putting out these declassified documents proving that to the craziest in the world right now. Stuff that used to be considered crazy is no longer crazy. So I think what's happening, potentials are opening up a lot more. And it's also meaning that we have to start looking at what we're using. We're not conditioned to think that. I put out a piece too talking about how AI is forcing us to get out of deterministic thinking, which comes from the result of binary thinking. So often when we are trying to code stuff, I notice this while programming, apps with AI, is that we will actually try to put in limitations or conditions to have sort of outputs. But AI doesn't think like that. AI thinks probabilistically and will have more than two options, and the results should actually be the same way for human beings. Like we should have more than two options or even one. Like when you put something to AI, right, you're like, okay, I get one output, right? Because I just want the truth, right? But that truth, as we know, is there's a lot of different perspectives on truth. I think a lot of us have true outlooks or perspectives or angles, right? But the truth itself can also have a lot of different probabilities. And I think that's what AI, LLMs, the quantum states is forcing us to understand. And I'm just learning this at a very practical level while building tools using AI. That's sort of my observation so far.
And what is your truth? What truth are you chasing? Do you have a moonshot for this year?
Okay, two questions there. What truth am I chasing?
Isn't the moonshot the truth? No, like it's something really hard, right? But truth is really hard by nature, no?
I think there's this great image. I think I can find it later. Where it shows like a sphere. Right? It's a cylinder in the middle or in the corner of the room, and there's light shining both sides. So you have the cylinder floating in that corner, and there's an arrow pointing saying that the cylinder is true, right? The cylinder on both sides are true, but the truth is that.
Okay.
And I think all of us are coming from those shadow points of the truth, and we all have true sort of outlooks, right, of what the truth is. And I think we're all just trying to get closer and closer to the truth. But in a weird way, I think we can only do that as collectives, because if all of us are standing at different, positions around the truth, then no one of us has the whole truth. And so I think that's why it's
true.
important. True.
True, man.
Right? That's how I see it. So that's why I always look at how people see the world, even if it sounds crazy to me, right? Like using that example of the cylinder, somebody's looking at like a red version, the shadow of the cylinder, and someone's looking at a blue version, right? So the person who only knows blue hears somebody say no, it's red, going, "You're fucking crazy," right? That's not true. Blue is true, but both can be right.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what you were saying about the end. You know,
So you still believe in democracy then?
okay. Democracy was already kind of shut down by Plato, Aristotle, and more during its time, 2,000 years ago. I think democracy is a reflection of the culture, right? Which is why in the West it works. You see how democracy also does not work when you push it into other cultures, like in the East, South America, other aspects. I think elements of democracy and noble pursuits, like um, freedom of speech, all that sort of stuff. Always lead to demagogues.
True.
Because you just need a charismatic leader, right? You appeal to the lowest common denominator, or the average, and you, right? And this is how dictators rise too, because all they need to do is like, yep, I feel your pain. Let's get riled up about something that you've been working with, and yeah, a demagogue almost always results.
Right. Agree with that. Not sure if we should go in the Trump direction. I've ranted about that this week very much on Twitter, but
Yeah.
seems that your moonshot is like building micro empires and
Yeah.
Communities, right? You're quite good at community. I suck at community. I've been trying to build a mastermind for 2 to 3 years called level96.com. And I mean, it's been somewhat successful because I've converted some free memberships into some high ticket clients, but never got people to pay the $1,000 price tag per month that CEOs would have to pay to enter that peer group. You have GSD, you have a bunch of other communities. How do you do it? Is it just your nature? Because by nature, I'm not. I mean, I'm a leader. I've had my little gang of friends, and all of that. But I'm not. I'm a giver too. I'm quite generous, but I don't know what you have. How I could explain your mojo that makes you great at what you do.
Influence comes from my mom. Culture, and this is where culture influences a lot, right? But growing up, my mom was always talking about the importance of family. That sense of family is what see community, and also everything that comes with family, to all of the drama, all of the dysfunctionality. I see the same things play out in communities and businesses too, organizations. So I think I look at it in that sense, right? That when you're building a community, you kind of think of a family, right? And it's interesting because when you kind of pull it into the business world, people are seeking a sense of community or family, right? But then when you start adding transactions, it changes. So there's a fine line that you have to walk when it comes to saying you're building community versus just saying, okay, this is just it's a network, right? And that's the difference between networks and communities. Communities are what are known as small networks, which means that I have to be small by the time, which allows you to experience. And if you want to charge for that, then the charge has to be based on the value, right, that you're giving them with the smaller group. And I think the most successful mastermind groups where you're paying a lot usually comes later for a small percentage of the larger, right? Because there's only going to be like probably 1% of those people within your larger network who are going to see the value that you provide. And they're going to want to experience that can only come with one-to-one time with you.
Got it. Because my funnel was like podcast interview, which is still working amazing. Then the mastermind stuff, potentially have them on my newsletter and all my content. That's still going, but the mastermind, man, I've been hustling for 3 years at it. I still haven't gave up the thesis, but so that means something, right? I'm still very bullish on things. I tend to give up quickly on what I see is not working. But yeah, let's see what I can add the spices I can add to that meal this year to make it successful.
Yep.
I want to talk about stuff that you've been into as of late, which is AI app building. Saw you a lot with Bolt.new, right?
Yep.
I saw Matt Eliason make 40K a day through his building AI apps on Twitter. 40K a day, that's like technically a $15 million business a year. I mean, this guy, he built an audience and a community for a year. Not sure if you've heard about Matt Eliason.
No,
He's in the crypto world as well.
Matt Eliason.
Yeah, he has a nice book as well for the audience. It's called Crypto Confidential. So if you want to listen to it, Crypto Confidential here. No Wi-Fi. Yeah, we should have Wi-Fi on the roof. But the question is, now that we have the ability to build AI apps, what does that mean? I have the GTM skill. I'm technical. I can probably build my AI podcasting platform where guests can find hosts in days. Does that make me automatically rich? Most people aren't good at GTM and product market fit. What's the revolution that's happening under our feet right now? Yeah, building apps.
Okay.
With Bolt.
No, I'll connect in what I was talking about, the probabilistic thinking. So there's two areas, right? There's money.
Yeah.
I think right now what I'm seeing is tools and products that are still a bunch of automation.
Yes.
Fancy.
Fancy Zapiers.
Fancy Zapiers. That's exactly it, right? So it's very interesting to kind of go through that at the product build level to see what's happening, because there are actually very few systems that are agents. So 2025 is set to be the AI agent year. It's supposed to do things a lot more autonomously than
Yeah, it's just a prompt, go do this, and then the agent does it, right?
Correct. And that's what it should be, but it's not there yet. There's still a lot of manual setup that we have to do in the background through the prompts to tell it what to do. I think what's interesting is that if you are a good manager, right, or if you have experience with teams, then you already have the skills to be able to manage agents, and it has. I think what it's all about is being able to understand, like, okay, here's the end goal that we want, and here are the exact processes. And if you have good experience training people, and since the AI systems are actually responding better to just great communication input prompts, then those type of platforms end up doing a lot better. So this year I'm looking more at these AI agents, but last year was really about just the foundation building. And a really interesting observation. So some of the stuff that I'm able to do now using AI, he never calls himself a co-founder, but Siggy, if you're watching, I still consider him one. Guy, he a lot of the setup for the databases, architecture, etc. But with him, you can do most of that yourself. But experienced engineer, because of their experience, they can ask questions.
Yes, that's the key.
And I noticed that this is how education is changing, because for humans, we have to actually judge our intelligence based on the quality of our question, not the knowledge alone, but actually the experience, the integration of all our knowledge will result in better questions.
Because the question's an answer in the end, right? It comes from the background, like the substance of the question itself from previous data.
These products, they require tokens to be able to set up their systems. If you ask questions, you will save on money directly, because it will require question prompt. So this is a direct correlation of your expertise and then using AI.
Right, and there's a couple of insights here in that revolution that's happening, like jobs that we thought never would be replaced, like software engineers, right? People that are getting paid 300K a year are getting replaced right now. And the question is like, once I actually build this app with AI with a semi good prompt, how do I commercialize it, right? So is it even the question of is it better to be technical founder or non-technical on the south side of things? I think you need to be full stack nowadays, right?
Yes, yeah. So you actually see this with the new like synthesized jobs. So I've noticed this that like a lot of companies, is a good example. They've stopped hiring software engineers. They're now hiring design engineers. So you see a lot more of these type of roles that are synthesized ones, where you're going to have two previously separate job titles coming together. And because I think myself and a few other friends I know, we have as entrepreneurs in general, that's why for a company, right? Because one thing is like, that's all you do. And sorry, my hair just getting in my.
And sorry, this
Yeah.
mezcal is not getting like softer. I've never tasted a mezcal that is that strong. Parenthesis closed.
Um, yeah. So all of these synthesized jobs now are all the rage, and I think we're going to see more of them. But what that means is, yes, you need to be full stack, and it's no longer enough to be just an engineer or just a designer. If you are a designer, learn engineering, learn that side. If you are an engineer, also do the other side. Are in the community management space, right? An area that I was in for 10 years. A lot of them are worried about their jobs because when all the layoffs were happening, all of their jobs essentially were just being let go of because people were like, "Oh, I don't see the direct correlation, between community and sales and stuff." So yeah, I think that's how things are shifting right now. Yes, jobs are being lost, but a lot of them are also being combined.
Right. The year of AI agents will be really exciting for us entrepreneurs that are already far in the game and we're open to testing new apps, right? I think it will be connecting agents with agents, having this agent work with this other agent in a team. What's the next billion trillion dollar company? Is it a company that centralizes all these agents through APIs? Any business ideas or moonshots that you're really bullish about?
Well, I think this is why I set up Micro Empires. Is essentially the thesis there is that like more and more power is coming to us, right? It needs to be and they're have a lot of overhead in order to run large companies. I think he has in the first one person $1 billion company going to launch become a thing. I think make up
Mm. Gum.
not Gumroad, but so yeah, feel free to check that out. They have 4 people right now, and they're looking to be the first 10-person.
Holy shit. And what was the last 10-person billion dollar company? Which one was that again?
Oh, I don't know if it was WhatsApp. WhatsApp had a pretty small team, but I don't think it was 10. It might have been less than 40.
I think it was Sam Altman's Alameda.
Oh,
Sam Altman, Sam Bankman. Sam Altman.
Bankman.
Sam Altman's the brother of. No, isn't?
No.
It's
Sam
Jack
Bankman.
Altman.
Yeah.
Getting confused here. Cheers.
So yeah, Gumroad's an example. But on for my newsletter for Micro Empires, I'm highlighting these sort of companies to talk about how and why these micro empires. It's kind of going back to a time when we used to have city empires. So if you want to understand where you're headed, always look. You go back into the past, you have to make more informed decisions. So it's like as we evolve, we kind of go up. We don't go around all the time, and sometimes we fall, but we can keep going back up. And as we're going through these cycles, these evolutions, we are finding out about old things, but applying new things to new ways.
And I started this convo saying that we wouldn't face the end of the world and type of apocalypse, but you've studied various civilizations and many of them have end up in the sinkhole.
Yes.
Do you predict that something like that could happen to us as a guy that's more informed at that level than myself?
Definitely, inevitably. I think this is a thing that it makes sense when you become a power or a superpower, right? You're going to do everything in your power to keep it. You see this with large corporations, superpowers like the United States or China, empires. And so I think very few actually know how to gracefully exit or gracefully, right? And I think if Ray Dalio is another favorite investor of mine, and he has, I think, in the book, is it Principles or Cycle of the Order or something?
Yeah.
One of those.
Shifting World Order.
Yes, the Shifting World Order. Where he talks about these cycles that have existed, right? And so they all go through sort of predictable points in their own hero journey. And the United States, as an example, if you look at what happened with Trump and the slogan that worked really well was "Make America Great Again." On one end, at least he was honest enough to acknowledge that the U.S. is not great, right? Or not what it used to be. And China, on the other hand, is on its upward trajectory. And people forget that Chinese history is vast. They have been empires.
They've been abused a lot by Japan.
Oh,
they're pissed at that.
I mean, all empires have their life in too.
Yeah.
They've groups. So I think it's just for us as kind of stay a bit agnostic and we move to wherever where I think at the moment is the US, they still have some time left, but there's kind of an empire. And often what happens is, according to Ray Dalio, right, it always leads to some sort of major conflict, right? Where we're seeing the money printing just before the fall. But after these wars, there's a new world order, right? And so I also try to see where money. But
the interest rate and all that, but I don't pronounce myself that much on micro stuff nowadays because it's so unrelatable to my world specifically and what I do. And I think I'll thrive in pretty much anything that happens. Obviously, most of my friends and my clients are from the US, Canada as well, where I'm from. And Canada's an ally. That's sort of the bitch right now of the US. And there's all kinds of things happening right now. I think Trump will be pretty good for business and the economy, generally speaking. But question I had today is my bias towards capitalism, right? Because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that lose themselves in wealth and money. And yesterday a friend of mine saw my post about Trump and is like, forget about politics, but I'd love to start my country later on in life and be more impactful. If country's even a thing, right? Because I think country's an outdated notion. I think we should be one type of world. Do you have such a desire to start your own real community and not a fucking cult, but a country that?
Line, man.
It's like Brian Johnson and Don't Die. I mean, that's it's very coldy, but I love the guy.
The documentary.
Yeah, I love that guy. What do you think about that? Well, let's start with the country thing. Let's talk about Johnson after that.
Okay, so what was the question?
You want to start a country? Do you feel that countries will still be a thing, or is it like no frontier, one internet, one type of world nowadays, unified world?
They're just different names or labels for groups of people, if you think about it, right? Originally there was the village, then there were the towns, the what do you call it? The states, the city, etc. And then we had nations. And then what happens too when we become an interplanetary species, like what Musk is doing, right? If we go to Mars, how will we then start to? I think for me, I know that there's a lot of people who are very patriotic, right? Nationalistic. But then, what occurs, right, when we need to start identifying ourselves as Terrans or Earthlings or something of the sort, right? That is going to kind of fuck with a lot of people's sense of identity. And I think the digital world has also affected a lot of that because I think we're all part of a lot of different communities online. But that is also it is kind of like how nature is set up in a way, right? Like if you look at ecosystems, the biodiversity they're all overlapping and mixing in, right? Each species know what their species are. I think that's what we're going to see a lot of, which is sort of that like fluid movement of identity groups. And well, for me, I would just love for us to be able to celebrate all the different cultures and appreciate it versus be like my culture is better than yours. Because we see
Are entrepreneurs better than normal people?
well, of course we'll say yeah. But with entrepreneurship, I've seen where a lot of people love the idea of entrepreneurship and then actually have to like hustle and take on the responsibility and stuff. Realize nope, not for me.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of risk involved. So I think we're just a different breed too. But it's an identity, it's a label, right?
But isn't the future fully entrepreneurial or free answer-ish?
Hard to say because I think there are some people who still, even if given that choice, they just might not.
But won't they be on UBI and fully dependent on us, and that's a responsibility to sort of feed them?
I don't know. Will the UBI come from entrepreneurs, or would it be a state or government like?
I think the state thing will break apart. That's a big hangover/vomit scenario that we'll see in the next decade or two.
History has shown, right? It cycles, keeps happening again and again.
Yeah, that's part of the game. And if you're an entrepreneur, it's up and down.
Yeah.
Now, the second question topic that we had, which is one of my favorites, my personal moonshot, right? AI longevity, the intersection of both is what I'm into. That's my moonshot this year. Brian Johnson, what do you think about that guy?
Well, yeah, watch a bit of that documentary. And longevity, if you look at also, I mean, if there's been studies for a reason, it kind of does show that we were supposed to live a lot longer than we do currently, right?
Yeah.
So there's already some markers saying like the fact that we are younger and what our DNA says we should be dying at is also a cause for concern, or at least poses the question like, whoa, what the hell? Why aren't we living longer? Because we often hear, right, like, oh, well, because of our civilized world, we're living a lot longer than we ever have in human history. But then we look at the DNA, it's like, well, actually, no. It looks like we regressed and something happened where maybe the wars, right, that had a huge part to play, but we're meant to live longer. So I think the fact that he's doing all these things to himself, at least he's a guinea pig, right? He's leading by example. To me, it looks very extreme. We also get Tim Ferriss, I think was the other guy who I remember back in the day.
He's the OG.
He's the OG.
Yeah.
He would himself.
4-hour body.
Yeah, right. 4-hour work week, 4-hour. We get a whole series. So I think this is great. And yeah, let's see. I think if he is able to sort of show that doing these things, then great. But I also think, well, even if you did all this stuff to have a long life, you can just walk outside and a car comes and hits you, and you're dead.
Yep.
Right. So I just always think about that. Right. It's not just about like doing stuff so that you can live longer. Like you also just have to live your life as fully as possible with whatever you're given.
Okay, let's get deep now. What
Yeah.
if someone takes part of my dead body's DNA and install consciousness into there? What is your definition of human consciousness?
Goddamn. What is it?
That would make me immortal, right?
Well, I think I'll use Black Mirror examples. Right. I think Black Mirror.
But that's how we think. We
Yeah.
think in Hollywood term, don't we?
Yeah. I mean,
Fucking Hollywood, man.
Well, it's a reflection also of what we are going through already.
Right.
So what's interesting is that a lot of people got really freaked out about what they did in Black Mirror, but it was really more a reflection of
Was so
stuff
good.
already happening, right? Hollywood is just a great mass media machine, So I was trying to take it so. But if I use Black Mirror examples, I kind of look at identity when we're talking about consciousness, and our identities, there's obviously egos attached. When we over-identify with who we are, then there's more ego involved. Right? But then we are.
Yes.
lose that.
Inner attention span, inner cognition.
So if somebody, say, loses their memory, would you say that they are still conscious beings?
No, Alzheimer, they're a shell of themselves.
Right.
Dementia.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
So I do tie, I think, consciousness to memory. And there's a really good book I'm reading at the moment by Blake Crouch. There's a show from Virgin. The storyline is actually what would happen if memory was infectious like a disease, where you could get infected by people's memories, you don't know which memories are yours or the one of other people's.
That infection implies that some memory might take some of your personal memory.
Correct.
I would guess. I wouldn't
Like
like
that
that.
takes over, right?
But my vision of the future is very much neuralinked,
Mhm.
in which I can feel your emotions right now.
Yep.
Like we tend to fancy ourselves as great as humans, but we forget shit all the time.
Yeah.
We talk out of our asses, and all of that. I think neuralinking people together would be great. I could instantly know you, know your problems, understand why you're feeling that way, and potentially help you. And what do you think about that, Elon's future?
I'm big on that. I'm not so big on the artificial aspect of it.
Okay.
But we live in a world that is very so this will happen regardless. But if you look at a lot of cultures that still are very strong in their ancient wisdom, ancient texts, right? Buddhist monks, there's so many stories about seemingly supernatural need for these artificial devices, right? Now it takes a lot longer. Technology allows us to get to those places faster, but it then makes you ask, why have we been given time if we then don't use that time to understand it? Because from what I've noticed, humans are not very good with fast-paced things. A lot of folks in workplaces are complaining about how fast they feel like things are changing. It's almost like we can't keep up, right? And then I think if we were created in some form of consciousness, given time to be able to experience things in a certain way, the more that we speed it up, there are benefits, but it also means that we no longer have the time to maybe synthesize some of those experiences along the way.
But what if we can change synthesis and accelerate or the way neurons connect together through Neuralink?
So
we're already doing it through biohacking. I'm doing it on a daily basis.
So in that sense, I look at it from a consciousness standpoint, and I think as a planet, right? There's an interesting theory. I forgot what it's called. It might be the Gaia theory, but essentially that there are some who believe that our planet is a living being, conscious being, right?
Sure.
And that we are essentially just cells in the body of our planet.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, right in the Matrix, right, like human race is a disease sometimes. That's what we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But with all this sort of biohacking stuff, I think from a collective conscious standpoint, if we can start to be able to feel each other, what's going on, I think there'll be a lot of benefits because then you would truly not do unto others what right you would have done to you. And I think that's a wisdom that has been passed down for ages, but not everybody gets it, right? Because we feel the illusion of separation. And I think that if we can use technology to get closer to that, great. Of course, there'll be a lot of trade-offs, or there might be unintended consequences. But I think we'll get us closer to that. Telepathy, or the idea of telepathy and stuff, right? Where once you can start to everything, then you also have to control your mind because to hear your thoughts, right?
Your fucked up thoughts.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because I remember there's another sci-fi show I was watching where they had this device that literally visualized all your thoughts in this bubble around your head.
Yep.
And so people could hear it and see it, right?
That was good.
Yeah. So, people then realize that, oh shit, I actually have to control my thoughts, which right now is like meditation, it's a real big discipline. So technology could amplify that potentially. And if we're not ready, then it'll be disastrous. But if we are ready, then it'll be good. It always comes down to that.
Would that level people, or would that create even bigger oligarchs?
Yeah.
Or both?
It's
Or
a
more of the latter and less of the former?
I think I already, having been through in the blockchain space, I already see some potential issues with Neuralink without accountability. Is that if all your thoughts now are being transmitted, obviously you need someone who's going to be hosting all that data, right? If that is not accessible by you, every single data packet being sent or received, then essentially everything that's going on in your mind becomes a commodity to be sold by larger companies.
Hmm.
That's the unintended consequence of this technology, right? If you look at the non-device supplemented, say we go down the Buddhist monk route, then you have control over that aspect. When technology accelerates, there's that trade-off. It becomes something to be sold.
I think humans would adapt to that reality of like seeing one another's mind. I think at first we would instantly understand how fucked up most humans are, or how why things are not working the way they should, right? Like most people are really good at hiding what they think, what truly they're thinking inside. They also identify themselves with thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Have you gone through your own spiritual journey? How do you control the monkey inside you?
How do I control the monkey? I think it's first appreciating the monkey. I think a lot of people look at this sort of stuff as something to suppress control. And I mean, I used to be a fan of Naruto, the
Naruto.
anime. Yep. So I remember there was one where Naruto has to face his like shadow side, right? And he's undergoing training for stage move from the master, and he's essentially fighting this shadow version of himself. And in a lot of other, I think, depictions of mastering the shadow side of ourselves, it's usually like, oh, I have to destroy the shadow, right? And then that shows that you've conquered yourself, right? You're in control. Whereas for Naruto, and this is a reflection of Japanese culture, right? It's not about destroying the shadow; it's about acknowledging. So in that episode, Naruto, instead of fighting, because he was literally fighting, but the shadow knows every move that Naruto knows, right? He realized, well, I can't beat him by fighting him. So in one final scene, Naruto just hugs the shadow, and literally the shadow can't take the amount of acceptance or love that Naruto shows the shadow side. And the shadow side was literally just starved for attention because it was always being beaten, right? As something that had to be destroyed or controlled. But the shadow also provides a form of protection for ourselves. Because I think in that episode, Naruto was saying like, thank you for keeping me safe when I was younger, but it's like I no longer need you now because I understand why you were there in the first place. And I see that same conflict reflected in our society, right? All of the shadow sides is a massive industry, right? If we look at what's going on behind the scenes, right, and then you see how maybe religious folks look at the darker parts of our society. They'll look at the darker parts as something to point the finger at, to blame, to look at something that's separate. But if you truly understand connection, if we're going to be get to a point where technology connects us, you're going to look at other parts of ourselves and see it as truly ourselves. Most of us look at something else as different, but they're more reflection of us.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's where it sounds.
Right. And fixing that is pretty hard. Does love always win, or do we need punishment in this society to advance? For example, the doggies, they pee on the floor, and I'm gonna tell them, no, don't do that, punish them. If my wife keeps behaving some way, I'm gonna tell her I don't like that. You change that, and vice versa, right? So do we still need a bit of punishment, or is it full love, full empathy?
Yep.
And then to get to that empathetic state, is it a biochemical thing, less cortisol, more serotonin?
Yeah, it's interesting. Look at biohacking and looking at what's going on with our biology. I look at the biology as more of a manifestation of the more invisible forces, right? Consciousness, spiritual aspects. A lot of diseases they've now even proven scientifically, right, that it can come from our emotions, what we feel, right? Stress can cause us to be physically sick, etc. But I think when it comes to punishment, I think so long as we are in a dualistic world and our consciousness is still at that level, the answer is yes. If you want to get to that point where we're feeling each other and like everything, we'll have to raise and move beyond duality.
And that's inevitable, right? It seems that the Neuralink thing is the most viable thesis to see that big shift in humanity, including having less wars out there.
Mm.
Because if I understand my opponent, my enemy, and his motivations, I'll see myself into him, right?
Well, because again, everybody interprets the world differently. So if that's what individual consciousness impacts whether these technologies that you see it all the time, right? Somebody with the right intentions with a certain technology can put it out into somebody with a lower consciousness or a different one. They're going to use that same device to do bad and to maybe magnify the worst, of humanity.
And will good always strive over evil? Isn't there limits to evil scalability?
I think it is part of our matrix experiment at this moment, man. Because we
Is
have
there such a thing as free will?
debatable, right? I believe in both fate and free will, like destiny and free will. Kind of like there's a blueprint that we have, right? And how you get to the end point is up to you based on certain milestones.
Right. And yeah, I believe in
Yeah.
that as well. You and I, when you arrived here, we talk about subconscious a lot. Is that
Yeah.
still a theme? And
Yeah.
what are synonyms to subconscious? You're like a dream explanation guy from the first conversation that we
Yeah.
have. What's your stance on subconscious? Is that some Freudian bullshit or?
Yeah, no, I'm more of a Jungian, right? I think Freud, he just saw everything as being sexually oriented.
That fucking guy, man.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. And again, this is where your consciousness, your lens, right, will dictate how you perceive the world. So I think there is some what he has written is true, but isn't the whole truth. You know, so I can see a lot of but there's more to it. And I think this is where, like, from the dream side, there was this author called Sergio Magaña here in Mexico. I actually was fortunate enough to meet him in Mexico City. And he had written some great things about the ancient dreaming practices of the Toltecs. And it's really fascinating because I saw a lot of correlation between the practices that he shared in the book and what I grew up with from a Polynesian side.
Yeah.
The way that they look at our subconscious, right? It's a lot more symbolic. So they'll use a lot of, Toltec Olmec symbolism. They talk about the Nawal and the Tonal. So essentially, they believe that we have a day dreamwalker side and a night dreamwalker side. And essentially, just like the sun, as it sets, right? When we go to sleep, it switches between day and night. And so they believe that we have another self that kind of takes over and takes us into reality. It's considered to be more true of what's going on in the subconscious and our daywalkers. So what I found was really fascinating. Like, even a lot of the Mayan cities, they have these professional dreamers. And if you go to the museum in Mexico City, there are these Chuck Mull statues. And according to Sergio, these Chuck Mull statues, they're actually in the middle. And apparently, these bowls would have either water in them or these black obsidian discs. And what they would do is that they would practice looking at the reflection inside the bowl of water or the black obsidian disc until they could control the reflection in terms of like making it disappear. Then they would use that as a way to train themselves to what people call now in the West lucid dreaming. So then they would lucid dream and get all of this information from the dreams and use that to essentially invent reality or get information that would inform how to do things. And I've experienced this myself. There has been information that has come to me through dreams that I never known about, heard about, learned anywhere. And it would lead me down sort of rabbit hole that would give me directions for stuff that I might have been not aware of, right, or not know what to do with. So yeah, there's from a subconscious level, dreams are a hugely like untapped area. We still start to grapple with.
Right.
And I think a lot of indigenous cultures and communities have a lot to teach us on how to deal with the dreaming self.
Right.
Yeah.
Talking about impact, the impact that you want to have in your lifetime. Not sure that Elon keeps coming back. Is that team or the strategy to get there to have the biggest impact out there as a single human? Is it to get really rich and powerful, or is it to build a community around it?
Hmm. I think this has changed over time. It's like in my like rich, making a lot of money, that sort of stuff. As I'm like near 40, see impact and that sort of stuff. And I realize that again, why do we feel the need to have those things or do those things or even be known for it?
Hmm.
Right? And if you look at a lot of these spiritual traditions, a lot of time it's or reducing that as much as possible. And I think at this point, the aim for this year is actually just be useful, right? And I think Elon Musk has talked about this. John Cena, I'm seeing a video of
John Cena.
pretty wise. Some of this stuff.
His last movie in Suicide Squad, his role was pretty good.
Yeah, really, really interesting. But yeah, people like that. They say being useful is really hard. Being truly useful to other people. And I think there's so much power in those simple words that even I'm like, maybe that's what I want to just focus more on, just being useful and simplifying all of this. Because I feel like success is often a result of other things, right? And so the goal is not to be successful anymore. I think it's just to be as useful as possible in this life.
And just being useful to one person is hard. So you're all about one experiment and then potentially scaling that through technology. Or
Yeah, see, and I don't even think about the scale anymore either, right? Like again, scale is just a result of it should be a result of supply and demand. We use our business, right? If I'm doing enough useful work, right, there should get a point where there is more demand than supply. And so in order to deal with the supply, that's when I'll need more capital, resources, etc. And then the scale comes. And so I don't have scale as the goal. Again, it's just going back to being useful. And I think this is what I've learned from a lot of my other like wealthier friends. There's a point where you hit a certain amount of money, and then more money doesn't actually make a significant difference in your life, man. And if I'm honest, I'm living like I'm retired already right now.
yeah,
A lot of people, yeah,
since a while, I think,
Yeah.
because when I officially made it is when I knew that I had the skills to make money forever.
Yeah.
Obviously, if I lose my
Yeah.
head and become paraplegic,
it's,
I wouldn't be as wealthy anymore. But yeah, when did you actually knew that you officially made it?
I think it's when making money became effortless and opportunities just started flowing in from doing what I enjoyed the most. But again, it's a combination of skills and experience. Right? Like, entrepreneurs, we definitely spearhead and accelerate our learning by just like trial by fire. Throw ourselves into things, make a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of them. But I think that's why I now find myself in this position where flow does come a lot more naturally, and it's less about me going out getting something now and more about just adjusting the space around me and allowing like nature to do its thing.
Right.
And I think that's is that if we take nature as a guide for us, we can start to stress less and realize that the world really is start thinking that it's not, well, nature, universe, whatever you want to call it, starts to reflect that back to you.
Wow.
That's been my biggest realization.
I want to hit home. Being selfish here and asking a bunch of me-related questions.
Yeah, go for it, man. We just having a conversation with the sunset.
Well, that the first one is like related to my personal interest, but it's directly with like GSD. How can we scale that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or how can I help you scale that?
Yeah, no, it's funny, right? Talking about communities, like to me, it's so effortless. And I often think about the scale, but it's a good question. I think going from the feedback that people have provided, and a lot of the different communities I've been in, a lot of folks are looking for connection, but it comes in different stages. So there are some people who just want to have the in-person connection, right? Which is what we had. Oh, we got somebody with comments.
Getting oiled up.
um, so yeah, there's people who sorry the in-person experience. That's the sort of connection they're looking for. Because maybe they're just so indoors on their computers all the time. That's what they want. The next level up is the ones who want to get more serious, right? They're the ones who are willing to pay for more, and they want a structured experience with a group of people that leads to a certain outcome. And then that last one at the very like the much higher levels, this is where they want to get shit done, but either they may be working inside a larger company already and they're frustrated with their own team or organization, or they actually want to apply that sort of get shit done stuff as a culture for the entire organization.
Mm.
And so those I've noticed those ones like to spend a lot more money. But I also noticed that it is very time consuming. That's the other thing. And so where you also have to ask yourself what type of lifestyle you want, what type of life do you want, right? What is your rich life? I think we talk about. Because like I've known what I need to do to scale GSD up more, but I've also not done those things because I have other things on, and I also know just how much time it takes.
Right.
Yeah.
And the cost of physicality, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Because if I
because
go, right, yeah, if we travel, go somewhere, what happens to the physical experiences?
yeah,
Yeah.
because you and I were here now, and definitely Mezcal Sunset. I'm gonna skeleton somewhere. I'm gonna invite friends here, and I mean
Yeah.
we're here. But my next idea was like, I don't know, a Web3 quote unquote conference. And as soon as we have conference, I have a good friend, business partner of mine, Sunny Ray's in El Salvador right now for another big crypto slash Bitcoin event, and he's at a hotel. I don't want to
Yeah.
rent a fucking hotel, or maybe I do. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
if
exactly.
it's me, I'm obsessed with scale, and
Yeah.
I can take lessons from you on that level. But
Yeah.
for example, like this podcast, I have an idea how to scale it, but do you feel you should make also events to attract like-minded people?
Yes.
And what about Oaxaca as a hub for that?
You're touching on a lot of good points. But yeah, this year I think we want more stuff in Oaxaca because first, Oaxaca is an amazing place, and there's so much potential for it. But I also look at there's always that dichotomy between the right, for those who speak Spanish, these are foreigners, right? And it's important for us to be aware that coming in here, make sure we're not exploiting, right? For with negative consequences. Incorporate, right? So if we're supposed to do anything in to include more locals as part of that process because there needs to be some sort of exchange in terms of what we know, having come from the outside, but also acknowledging the richness and wealth that Oaxaca has as a multicultural state. Guelaguetza period, in June, July, I love the Guelaguetza time. You really see the richness and the wealth of the culture that exists here in Oaxaca. And it's really nice to see how they celebrate. So doing stuff here, I think it would be great to have business oriented events, but incorporate the local culture because that is something that is always been right. I think franchise companies are a great business model to learn from because you look at McDonald's able to scale across the world, and they adjust pieces for the local culture. Like in Thailand, they have chicken and French fries. Fucking love it. And I remember.
Poutine in Quebec.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course, man.
Nice.
How could they not?
In India it was a bit weird because I remember they didn't have any what do you call it, beef patties, right, for the burgers. So I remember like the first time I got like a burger from McDonald's in India, it was like a veggie patty, and so you're expecting meat,
With
when you eat
curry.
it. Oh man, seriously. But McDonald's has a great scalable model, which is the franchise model. So I have looked at GSD as well. But I mean, not like
It's
McDonald's.
either the best example or the worst example.
Not like McDonald's. But again, just taking things from the franchise model because
Yeah.
it's a great system, and they know how to incorporate. Oaxaca also has an interesting history with McDonald's. I don't know if you know the story.
No, you'll need to
Yeah,
tell
I'll
it
tell
to
you
me.
about
I had my McMuffin this morning. I have
Yeah.
one every quarter, and that was today. Talking about serendipity. So what happened there? There's
Yeah.
two McDonald's in Oaxaca.
Yeah. So the story that I was told was that essentially McDonald's wanted to set up a store in the middle of But there's a huge,
Yeah, I heard that one.
yeah, there's a huge protest, right?
Yeah,
And that's why they're now like out on the outskirts.
Reforma and Plaza, whatever.
Exactly. But they're so smart. They literally put this massive TV or something right at the top, or the large M, so that if you're on the rooftop, you literally see the McDonald's sign from far away. That was like that's the way. But I mean, most people know.
And what's the thing against gringos here? For example, I see a lot of nonsense painted on the walls here, like feminist bullshit and Palestine bullshit and
Well,
get
yeah,
out
yeah.
of the gringos. What's up with? I mean, there's some rebellious parts here. I think there's students. There's that all over the world here. I think they're allowed to be painted. Like, how do you interpret that?
Well, again, it's not bullshit to them, right? And this is the thing about understanding, right? If you want to get to that level of consciousness where we're allowed to feel everything, right? The way that I see it is that for them, it's mostly xenophobia, racism, anything to do with people who are different from you. It's a form of xenophobia. And that's what I've learned from everybody. Because when you talk about black versus white, gringos or feminism, straight versus gay, whatever. Like all of these things are based on you are different to me. I don't understand you, therefore I don't
Mhm.
right? That's the downside, I think, of some cultures, which gravitate towards wanting to be homogenous or just a certain way. And then when there's too much of an outside influence, the tension rises, right? So it becomes, and if it's not managed, especially if it's not managed by a local government, then this is where you see that conflict occur time and time again. I noticed this that like I'll use the example of my school, which is a really interesting example actually from Bangladesh. So the international school, whenever new students would come in, you would have onboarding. You would pair up each new student with an existing student. Look at nations and how they deal with tourism. There's nothing like that. You just literally rock up, and there's no sort of onboarding of what the culture is like. There's no pairing up with locals, right? Because it would be considered too time consuming. So this is the downside of scale that is too fast, where people don't have enough time to adjust to the change, and as a result, you get xenophobia, you get racist remarks, you get people who don't understand each other, and so I see that they have a right, if it's their home, right? They have a right to say "fuck off," because
But is there such a thing as territory? Isn't that a
nature
very
has the right.
prehistoric notion that doesn't scale? Like talking about the internet, it's everyone's, right?
Yeah, I mean, but even that's a fallacy, right? Because the internet actually is owned by just a small group,
Yeah,
right? But the
but that
illusion,
won't happen.
yeah,
They won't take control over it because the power of people is too strong, and everyone can access the internet if they have a hardware device. And I will say that they not everyone has the latest, right? But
you should look up
it's still
ICANN.
very accessible. Yeah, I know I
Yeah, yeah,
can
yeah.
bullshit. I've researched that, and it's pretty. Yeah, that's like unfair. It's a corporation that is getting that is printing money essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, internet. I do believe it's a great invention that has benefited humanity as a whole,
Yep. Yep.
and it's not related to territory, right? Like it's Canada. Why Montreal? I have a Canadian citizenship, but I don't own that territory. I don't identify necessarily myself as a Canadian, nor do you have a clear anchor.
Yep.
Um, I
Yeah.
mean, it's fine that they live in prehistoric notions such as territory. I understand why. Also, they don't have options. They're not nomadic. They don't have laptops to work online. But to me, it feels pretty outdated when someone talks about territory. It's the same thing as Trump wanting to annex Greenland and Panama Canal in Canada.
Well, I mean, personally, I think the idea of ownership is kind of stupid too, because everything is wrong, right?
Yeah.
But I'm society that like ownership allows us to be able to take care of. There's a famous story about the what's it? Something to do with the commons. Gosh, I'll come back later.
Copyrights?
No, 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 no. It's not about copyright, but it's like commons theory about like if you give
Common
everybody,
law? Yeah.
but essentially if you give everybody the right over like a lake or something, essentially you will have people who will fight for dominance.
Yeah.
With
Mhm.
rule of law, with titles and whatnot, everybody gets their piece. How do what you want with your piece allows for potential to collaborate with others if all of you as a collective have greater vision, right? But we're still quite territorial, right?
Yes.
Beings in general. Like if somebody came out, another place right into your house and just started saying like, yeah, okay, I'm visiting, but you know what? I think I want to stay here now.
Yeah,
You know? And then you're like, well, hold up, wait, what the fuck? Can you please go back to your home? It's like, no, this is my home. I've decided that this is my home, right? If you have property rights, that's something that is good because you can use legal action to say, hey, you fuck off, like you need to get out, right? But if it was in a time when essentially, if you lose a battle, if you lose a fight, then that person can't just take over your home.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten too comfortable with the fact that like we have these sort of luxuries, right? Because if we just let things be without some of these aspects, right, that we can enjoy in a civilized society, we would have to be constantly fighting and defending against other people who want to take what you have.
So do you feel that Musk's thesis to launch dicks into space and conquer the moon, Mars, and so forth, do you think it's a scalable vision, or isn't this notion gonna disappear before with AGI knowing an alternate version of this reality, or a more truthful version of this reality, and or us connecting through Neuralink? Again, I think it's an end. Most of these questions that they can be answered in end. But what's your opinion on his thesis? He's dedicating his life to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of people who hate on Elon Musk, right? And the way I look at it, or I've learned to look at people, is that I try to separate what they do from who they are, because I don't personally know Elon Musk, his family, his life, right? All I can judge is what I see and the outputs, right? And he is a very efficient entrepreneur and engineer. He uses first principles, which I think allows him to be able to go into all these new markets and like very much dominate, right? And from that aspect, I have much respect for his ability to innovate. In terms of colonizing Mars, well, if he can learn from the downsides of colonization in our own human history, maybe great. But colonization is something that has many different cultures have attempted colonization or have successfully colonized, right? I think if you look in a lot of the indigenous circles, there is an increasing movement for decolonization, right? But this also stems from people wanting to have their own liberty, right? And I think if we live in a society where people start disrespecting that, right, then it becomes hypocritical, right? If a society the colonizer sets things up in a certain way, says we have freedom, we have liberty, but then doesn't allow that for other potential colonized nations, then there's tension there, there's conflict. So I think for Mars, I think it's inevitable at this point. I mean, who's going to stop him at this point, right? Like it's already happening, and just like how the United States or the Americas was colonized, when they discover, I think what might happen is we might discover other life forms on Mars too, right? Because essentially, like we're only going to one spot on Mars, right? And then from there, they're going to have to explore the entire planet. There may be other beings that are there. Maybe they're also in a fucking different dimensional plane. We don't know yet. We might not even have the technology to see that, right? This might explain also why we haven't been able to see other beings on other planets. But if we start to take in what we're learning now, that there are other dimensions, and that technology allows us to see things like once upon a time we weren't able to see infrared, ultraviolet, all that sort of stuff. And we have the technology to be able to see. So it's quite possible that beings exist on these different planes. But yeah, all of that, is coming out. It's going to open up our understanding of what it means to be a society as well.
So 100% chances that there are aliens out there?
Yeah, I mean, to me, yes. From very young, I've always felt that. And also, what if we are the fucking aliens, right? Human beings, what if we were genetically
I'm an
modified?
alien.
Yeah. So
you're a fucking alien.
So, this is why we've evolved differently from a lot of other species on the planet, right?
And if so, they're conscious of our existence, of our words right now, I think it's fair to assume. And maybe they overcame hostility. Maybe they are scaling on peace.
Yep.
And again, coming back to the Neuralink vision, maybe we sort of need to abandon that violence, that aggression mindset, and that conquering and that capitalistic system to scale to the next level.
I often think, right, if we look at ourselves as like children as a collective, right? I don't know if you heard about the stories of how, during the Cold War, um, nuclear weapons, how these like objects just appeared in silos and literally shut off all of the.
No, I didn't tell you that.
It's a fucking look up these stories. It's insane. So I see it as they're advanced beings, right? They're probably looking at us as fucking children, as a collective, that got access to this weaponry, this technology. Like, I'm gonna blow you up, and not realizing that like we're destroying ourselves. And essentially, they're kind of like playing a parental role. Like, no, 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 no. Okay, I'm gonna take that away from you. You're not gonna do that because whatever you want to call it. I think if we start looking at it that way, we can see how immature we are still as a collective. That's how I see it. Despite us being advanced, it's like saying you're advanced as a first grader. I think there's more levels that we still have to progress.
Yeah.
But yeah, because there's so many things. Like, war is actually not very profitable in the long run. Like over.
Did you see that falcon?
No, I didn't. I saw a bird come. But
What do you think about that landscape? What does it bring to you? That view. To close this off.
Man, I just love Oaxaca in general.
So beautiful.
Yeah. Sunsets.
The clouds.
Yeah.
The mountains.
100%.
The birds here.
Yep.
George, thank you
Nah, man.
for today.
Thank you.
We're gonna do a round 2.
Yeah.
I've got cold hands. We've got 2 dogs with us.
Yeah, they've been here this whole time.
Yeah, you see a paw here. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. That was George Siosi. Where can we find out more about you?
Yeah. Just you can find me at georgesiosi.com. That's SIOSI.com. So georgesiosi.com. And then also all my social media handles are at George Siosi. So yeah, with me.
George.